Where did I throw my?
These are both on.
Okay.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Douglas Kellner, co-chair, and I'll ask the commissioners to introduce themselves.
Ellen Aquila.
We usually start with our co-chair.
It's not ladies first.
After Evelyn Aquila, I'm Jim Walsh.
Sorry, Jim.
And we go around the table and have the staff identify themselves, please.
Todd Valentine,
Kim Galvin.
Paul Collins,
Joe Burns,
Anna Svizzero,
Pat Campion,
John Conklin,
George Stanton,
Liz Hogan.
Bob Brehm.
Sarah Green.
Bob Warren,
And our guests.
Bob Grunspach, Nysboe.
Sue Stewart, League of Women Voters. Amy Allen, League of Women Voters.
Welcome to everyone. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of December 15th, 2009. Is there a motion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are adopted. Now we turn to the unit updates, and we'll start with the executive directors, Bob Brehm and Todd Valentine.
We continue to work with the pilot review committee of the county election commissioners. We've been piloting with our pilot committee the use of our new web conferencing, and that has gone, we've received very positive comments. We're able to cover the actual documents and talk and share notes back and forth, and they felt it was very convenient not having to travel 3-4 hours to Albany one way to have a conversation. So we've had some phone calls. We had a session on January 7th where we focused on the post-election audit, the amendments that you made at the last meeting, the instructions that we put together in our procedures and areas that we could be clearer in what we're looking for in case they didn't understand what we were looking for. It was a very positive session. We have another session scheduled for January 20th where we look to focus on privacy issues related to the use of the new equipment at the polling site to follow up on some of our observations from the both the primary and the general election last year to offset some of those. So we have a number of sessions planned where we try to get their feedback on the procedures we gave them, whether they were clear, whether they were adequate, the training that they received both from the state board training sessions or from their vendors. Are there any gaps that we could fill before the next, before we launch it statewide? So those sessions are ongoing. They've been positive, and we look forward to our next session on the 20th. We've also had a number of meetings to review programs that are out, at least to review what other states are doing to comply with the MOVE Act and what other programs might be available. There were 3 specific sessions where we reviewed 2 proposals from vendors that already are working on a product, and also a discussion with SABRE, what we can currently do to make that compliance for 2010 a reality. And also Todd and I are attending a conference at the end of the month in Washington, and prominent on the discussion is both information from the federal and the other states is what they're doing to comply with the MOVE Act. So we continue to work on that project. And yesterday we received, I guess hosted, I'm not sure is the right word, a representative of the Social Security Administration showed up, had requested to meet with us as part of an internal control that they're doing, the NICE voter ID verification component that we work through DMV to the Social Security Administration to make sure that it is optimally serving, the requirements of the Help America Vote Act. So I know it was about an hour-and-a-half session. We had a series of questions in the steering committee and IT, and a number of us participated to answer his questions. And we look forward to how that. They had selected the 10 states that use the system the most to do a review to see, what were our internal controls, what were their internal controls, and was it working? So that was a positive session. I think that covers, at a high level, some of the items that we've worked on.
No, you know, and we summarized those, and it's also contained in the unit report. You have some of the more details if you're looking for that.
All right, any questions? Thank you very much. So we'll turn to the legal report from Kimberly Galvin.
We worked with the election operations. We participated in a lot of the meetings that Bob just discussed, and we continue to support the election operation unit and what we hope is the final choices of the voting systems in Nassau and New York City. And we still continue to work with them to clear up any purchase order issues that they may have, or any outstanding contractual issues with OGS, which is, there are a considerable amount of them, and we're working through them. We also participated in the county pilot review calls. We put together what we anticipate to be the first phase of a legislative program, which we'll discuss later. I anticipate that there'll be at least 3 phases of it. Our weekly status calls with the Department of Justice and updating them.
What they've been, I'm sorry, I shouldn't really interrupt you. I'm
Oh, that's
sorry.
fine.
At the end, you'll tell us about the Department of Justice. I'm sorry.
No, the Department of Justice was very pleased that both New York City and Nassau County did choose voting systems. I don't know how they're going to be with regard to the purchase order issue. I think that we've resolved a lot of the things with Nassau's purchase order, and New York City has said that they will have their purchase orders to OGS by February 1st. So all things being equal, I think that we're right on schedule with regard to that particular. They seem very pleased with that, satisfied at least.
Yes.
I don't know about very
Kim,
pleased.
are there any pending issues with the Nassau County purchase order?
There are still pending issues with the Nassau County purchase order, as far as I know.
Is there anything non-confidential that we can discuss?
Other than I think that we're resolving it, or it's working towards resolution, and should be resolved in the very near future. I think that there's more to say in executive session, but I think that they've worked with OGS and with us, and they're going to resubmit in a format that would be acceptable.
Yeah, the county's been working directly with OGS.
Right.
Because it is an OGS purchase.
And I guess in general, the issue is that the new contract with the ES&S provided for disposition of the existing Dominion ImageCast machines that Nassau had already acquired as ballot marking devices.
Right.
And so there are legal issues over exactly how that
Right, what that disposition would
can be
entail,
done.
or what would be an authorized disposition of those. And I think that Nassau County has conceded that it appeared more confusing than it actually was in their minds, and there was never going to be actual transfers of titles and things. So we're working towards resolving that in a way where it's palatable. And I think that OGS has said that they've figured out a way to put in their purchase order in conforming with the timeline and getting the machines to them that doesn't involve, there's still those issues, but now they become ancillary to the whole project that we still need to work through.
Very good.
And
I was concerned
the
about.
routine, questions from the county boards and the phone calls that we have. Do we answer any? Paul, is there anything else that you want to add to that?
Just the continuing saga of these pre-clearance submissions and responding to the Department of Justice's inquiry concerning the various submissions. I think the procedures amendment has not yet been pre-cleared. Everything else, I believe, has been, and there's one small, the street finder legislation hasn't received final pre-clearance yet.
All right, I don't anticipate any problem there.
No.
Unless they took some streets away that we don't know about.
And that's it, really.
All right. Then we'll turn to election operations. Anna Svizzero.
Thank you, Commissioners. We did notify county boards of the special election that was called by the governor to fill vacancies in 4 assembly seats. The 4 counties involved are Westchester, Nassau, Suffolk, and Queens, and that special election is going to be held on February 9th. There are also some local special elections in Suffolk and Westchester for shortly thereafter to fill county legislative seats as a result of those persons being elected to different offices in November. So in the context of letting you know about the special elections, we'd also let you know that the ballot marking devices are going to be used in the same manner as they were in the November election, because clearly, even though we've certified new systems, these counties have not had a chance to transition to a completely op-scan world yet. So we'll be working under those guidelines for those elections. Our status meetings with Nysboe have resumed. We have a number of procedures to update based on our own experiences, those from the pilot review committee, and as a result of certification, we also have some procedures that have to be written. So that relationship has resumed and that work has also resumed. We are reviewing SysTest final invoices. We expect to be speaking with them perhaps tomorrow, if not tomorrow, then on Tuesday. And we'll be contacting vendors for the additional funds that we need to close out that billing. Both of the vendors have asked that their test artifacts be sent to labs for federal certification, so we'll be doing that as well. We've created the upgrade packages to the certified versions. Those have been provided to the county boards for the most part. Our staff has been working on that for about a week. We do want to thank the Saratoga and Albany County boards. We wrote procedures for how to perform the upgrade. Bob Warren and his team did that, and we tested them out here. But in that we're more familiar with the systems than the county people may be, we wanted to pilot those procedures, and those two counties helped us do that. So once we got their feedback, we made changes that they recommended and have sent those packages out, or are sending them out today. We have EMS packages for the county boards once we confirm that the counties did indeed purchase the election management software. That software comes to the county from us, even though the vendor has to install it. So we'll be confirming that the purchase orders are in place either from last year, some counties did purchase their EMS last year, or have purchased it since certification. And we'll be sending those packages out. We've sent some already. Some of the vendors have done the installs and are doing training now, so that will be an ongoing process. We are in the, hopefully, final steps of an RFP to purchase a permanent asset management system that will help the counties manage their inventory and do so in a manner consistent with the federal requirements for assets that were purchased with federal dollars. And it will also help us in our oversight. Because of budget considerations and staffing considerations, the oversight of this process is going to be hard to do in a physical way in each board. So to the extent that we can use this system to perform some of our oversight responsibilities, I think that'll be an asset to the state board and certainly to the work that we're trying to do in operations. We have regular work that we do in election operations, surprisingly enough. We have post-election voter inquiries. We have county board questions relating to the disposition of records of lever machines, the question of use of the lever machines in other jurisdictions such as schools and villages. We did promise the boards will be speaking on that topic at the January conference. General guidance, a number of commissioners have retired, so there will be a lot of new commissioners at the January conference, provided those appointments happen before then. If not, we'll see them at our own conference at the end of April. We did participate in the first of the pilot review calls, as Kim indicated. The topic on that one was the audit process. I think the next topic is privacy booths and voter privacy and those concerns. So we'll listen to what the boards have to say on the phone and then try to incorporate those concerns into any new procedures that we have. And I think that is it for election operations. Joe, do you have anything else to add?
Anna, I wanted to ask you about the incident that, to review again what happened in the town of Tonawanda council race in Erie County. And the reason I'm asking is because I'm concerned that, again, there are people who are spreading false information about what actually happened there. as excuses for keeping the lever machines. And I think, we've tried to be as transparent as possible in showing where all the problems have existed, but it's very frustrating that when you try to be transparent, then people distort what actually happened. And with the internet, then things start spreading around. So I believe you have spoken with the Erie County officials and done a little bit of investigation yourself on this, right?
Yes.
May I just ask you, say what the problem was? It might be a
Well,
good idea.
let's ask Anna to
Oh,
just
all right.
explain the whole
Okay,
thing.
I just want
Yeah.
people not to know what you were talking about.
The scenario described is a little unfortunate because that kind of misinformation certainly does taint the waters in the world of public perception. But in any event, it was several human errors at the Erie County Board that resulted in the issue that you're discussing. There were votes that many claim were transferred from one candidate to another. And the facts are that the county did its own ballot configuration, programming as most counties are more comfortable calling it. But that ballot configuration, Erie had performed the prior year with ballot marking devices. In '09, they did their own ballot configuration for the scanners because they did a substantial pilot in the county. It was the entire county with the exception of the city of Buffalo. In the creation, there's a bit of a change in how the ballots get configured in the BMD world and in the scanner world at the Erie County Board with the system they chose, which is ES&S and the DS200. And the multiple appearance of a candidate's name on a ballot when they're cross-endorsed is handled one way in the BMD and another way in the DS200. And the staff that was doing the ballot configuration assigned, they're called sequence numbers, assigned the same sequence number to two different candidates. For example, if a candidate were on the Democrat and the Liberal line, their name would appear the first time as sequence number 1, and on the other lines that they appeared, they would still be sequence number 1, so that the system understood that if you voted for that candidate twice, they would still get only one vote. They wouldn't get a vote for every appearance. In the problem that the programmer, if you will, made in building that ballot, they applied the same sequence number to two different candidates. The test deck was created, the test deck was run, however, the test deck tapes were not validated by staff. The whole point of a test deck is you know the outcome. You mark ballots.
They ran the test, but they never looked at the results.
Exactly. So had they looked at the results of the test deck, they would have seen the problem in that week to 10 days before the election. They were busy with last-minute court cases. I think they had court cases with decisions that were rendered on Monday night, so one can understand how these things happen, but in any event, I think it's a lesson that they won't be forgetting anytime soon, and all of our counties would be well advised to learn from that as
It wasn't across the
well.
whole county.
Pardon me?
It wasn't across the whole
No,
county. That was
the
one
scenario
town.
occurred in the town of Tonawanda. It was in a council race. It was a vote for 3. So when the election results came in on election night, it was clearly obvious what had happened. The commissioners chose to, the ballots were returned to the Board of Elections. They did make the change in the ballot configuration, and they ran a test deck, looked at the results, and reran those ballots using the corrected ballot configuration, and the election results were no longer in dispute and no longer in question.
And they were never in dispute, right?
True, yes. I choose my words a little more carefully.
So just to summarize this again, you had a vote for 3 race for the Tonawanda Town Council.
Right.
And the first and third Republican candidates for that race were both assigned the same sequence number.
Yes.
So that the third Republican candidate, if somebody voted a Republican ticket and voted for all 3 candidates, the vote would only register twice for the first 2 because the third candidate had the same sequence number as the first candidate, and the machine had basically been configured to tell the machine that that was a cross endorsement
Exactly.
and not to count that vote twice.
We call them push votes. You get the vote on the first appearance of the candidate's name.
And that this did appear in the test deck.
It did. When they looked at the test deck, when they saw the problem on election night, they did look at the test deck tapes then and realized that they had a problem and confirmed what the problem actually was, and then made the change in the program.
And that
ran the
everyone
ballots
agreed
next day.
immediately on a bipartisan basis to count
Yes.
the ballots.
We've spoken to
All right.
both Commissioner Ward and Commissioner Moore on this, and to the staff member that did the ballot configuration work.
And if the commissioners will bear with me, I have two comments on this. Of course, lesson number one is that you have to actually look at the test results. And this isn't the only place in the state where they did not look at the test results. We had all of the problems in the 23rd Congressional District
Right, for the same reason.
also happened because of those counties which had not looked at their test decks. So the only places where they had problems were the counties that didn't look at the test decks and note that they had a problem. So that's lesson number one. Lesson number two on this is that we had the same problem on lever voting machines in another county. Actually, there were two different places, but I don't want to, I named them in my testimony before when I testified at the State Senate last, and I'm not sure that I remember them now, and so I don't want to give the inaccurate ones. But there were, the same problem occurred where there was an improper cross-endorsement strapping on the lever voting machine, and they discovered that voters were not being allowed to vote for all of the candidates on a slate. And this was for county, and the result was that when they discovered this, they had to shut down the machines. The problem, however, with the lever machines is that when you shut down the machines, you can't tell how many votes were lost. But when we had this problem in Tonawanda, they had the paper ballots, and they could simply go back and look at the paper ballots and
Get the right
and get
answer.
them. And also, in Tonawanda, even if this had not been transparent when they simply ran the tape and they saw that the third Republican candidate was missing all these votes, it would have been picked up in the audit. Because, so even if it had been a subtle error,
Would have been found.
it still would have been found in the audit, at least in a town of the size of Tonawanda, where you had 87 election districts. So the odds that no machine, so there were, the odds are that there would be at least two or three machines in Tonawanda that would have been audited. So that's what I think is unfair about some of the criticism, especially the fact that the same error occurred on a lever machine where they couldn't correct it because there's no record on the lever machine. And so that's the troubling dishonesty of some of these reports that I find circulating around. But Anna, I thank you for going into that detail.
Could I ask Anna one quick thing? Anna, would it be worthwhile for the next 2 years, say, to send out a list of reminders to the counties saying, don't forget to check your test tape, don't forget to do this, don't forget.
We
Sometimes
can
it
do
takes-
some gentle prodding, a little
Well,
good luck
because you know
email
what,
kind of thing.
they
but-
don't have they don't have the people, the number of people they need to do the job. We all know that.
I will say
most
in
of the
Erie-
county boards have very few people. And number two, when you come to the week or two, the couple of weeks right before elections, it's tremendously busy with printing and, getting the machines ready, court cases, where they want people from the Board of Elections testifying. And sometimes they're down to 1, 2 people. And I think a list of reminders, when I got a reminder in my office, I would stick it up on the wall to make sure I remembered it, So I'm just saying, I leave it in your hands, Anna, you know best.
Commissioner, I would add that the pre-election testing is not optional.
I know it
We
isn't.
have a regulation. It's mandatory that they do it. The regulation is also clear that they have to look at the results.
You know, there are all sorts
And-
of regulations in life about everything, but if you don't remember one, you don't
Right.
remember it. You
And-
know? It's not that
and-
you are just being, you know,
And from a
belligerent.
legal point of view, I would remind candidates and the political parties out there that it's probably worth it for them to also look at the test results. The election law provides
That they can.
that the parties have the right to have a paid observer, an observer paid by the county, appear at the testing, and to confirm the test results. One of the things we've found with the lever machines over the years
Yeah.
is that the lever machines often have configuration errors on
Yes.
them.
You know, you walk in to vote and it would be,
And
this isn't the
and
person running for Congress.
and the candidates learned that it was in their self-interest to go before the election and look at the machines to make sure that they
Their
were
name was
properly
on them,
set
that
up.
their
Well,
name
now
was-
they have to look at the configuration files for the scanners and to look at the test deck results to make sure that they've been configured properly. But again, one of the things that I find troubling in some of these articles is they say, well, they should have, that the vendor should have programmed the machine in such a way that this human error could not have happened. And I don't see how you can do that. We don't have the same candidates in every election. We don't have the same ballot configuration in every election. So there has to be a human element in the ballot configuration.
In any machine, there is a human element. I don't care if it's a tea kettle.
And
And,
the fact that they ignore that these same kinds of configuration elements happen in the lever machines. Another problem that happened in Sarasota County, the ballot card slipped. So that
can happen.
it was one candidate off.
Right.
So that people thought they were voting for candidate
Joe Blow.
A, and they were really voting on the lever for candidate B. And because the card slipped during the day, they don't know when it slipped, so the results you don't know. Now, in
I
that
think
election,
we all have war stories.
right, it didn't affect the results of the election, so it didn't get much attention. But
It is hard to get
there are
county.
dozens of those kinds of problems that occurred with the lever machines throughout the state that didn't get any attention at all because we're so used to them.
It is hard to get county money to staff up to do this. It would help
Right.
if there were party reps, eyes different from those of the person who did the ballot configuration. In Erie, they now have the staff at the warehouse that does the programming look at the test deck information, and once they sign off on it, it goes up to the executive offices where another team of people reviews it. That's great, and it's an excellent process, but in our smaller boards and boards without sufficient staff, the issue of party reps comes into play. We always had them in my county. When I came to work here, I couldn't believe the number of counties that did not have party reps that they call in and pay to do this work and sign off on the fact that the machine was set up properly and that the counters were at zero, et cetera. So anytime we can say that, and anytime, more importantly, we can put that in writing to a county board, it helps them when they go to the budget people to find the money to pay to have
Well-
these tasks performed.
The thing is for the parties to get that information, because you may know it at the Board of Elections, and I don't know how much you can, broadcast that out. But I mean, somehow all the parties need to know that they can do that, and maybe they don't. Maybe they don't, because, the people for the most part are volunteers, and they may not be sure that this is a place where they can be.
Mhm.
I don't know how we advertise that, except here. If any parties are listening, please find out what you're allowed to do the day of election and the week before of election and 2 weeks before.
All right, well, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I think you had finished your report, Anna?
Yes, I do.
All right, so we'll move on to public information. John Conklin?
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm not going to go through all the details of the report that I put in your packets. Just the first thing, which dealt with the media that we used for the new voting machine PSAs, was significant because we were able to significantly leverage the amount of money we spent to a 10-to-1 magnitude, and I thought that was something noteworthy. So in addition to that, we're still working on finalizing the details for the annual conference in April. We've posted all the certification materials that were approved at the December board meeting. We posted information on the February 9th special elections in the 4 assembly districts. As Bob and Todd mentioned and Kim mentioned, we've participated in a number of the meetings concerning the MOVE Act. Lastly, I will add a couple of things that were not in the written packet. We've sent out some extension contracts for voter education and poll worker training money to the counties. That's due back by January 29th. Also, quarterly reports were due at the end of December. There's a few stragglers, so if they could get them in by the end of the month, that would be very helpful. And that's all I have. Any questions?
All right, thank you very much, John. Campaign Finance, Elizabeth Hogan.
Thank you, Commissioner. As I have been reporting to the commissioners at the past few board meetings, I wanted, in order to bring to your attention the volume of calls and mail processing. May I tell you that for last year, it appears that the increased volume was running approximately 10 to 11% over the previous year. At the end of 2009, we had roughly 11,000 registered committees, candidates. We had received in 2009 29,096 individual filings. The January periodic is due tomorrow. Our enforcement proceeding relative to the January periodic will begin on the 19th. The Education and Training Unit, as I reported, continues to work on updating for ease of use for filers, the forms that we have, handbook information. We've made certain small changes at this point to the website, and we will probably launch into, maybe over the summer, a review of the campaign finance website overall, and hopefully make some updates to that and create a more usable tool for filers and for people who want information relative to filings. The training unit is scheduling training sessions for the spring, considering the fact that we are under some budget constraints for sure. We're trying to do the best we can to minimize what those seminars will cost the agency, but we have a statutory mandate to provide an educational component to the filing perspective, and we have to do it. So we're doing the best we can to consider all of those things in the plan to present the seminars. Audit staff will soon begin after the filing of the January periodic. The timeline for audits to begin this year, we'll be talking about the corporate. After the reporting is made, they'll be preparing a timeline, and probably in, in March, I think we'll be starting that. I think that is what we did last year as well. The audit staff is working on responding to requests for information from a number of district attorneys throughout the state to whom we have referred over contribution issues. We've gotten an interesting response from district attorneys relative to looking at those cases. And there's quite a bit of follow-up work to do relative to that. Bill and I had conversations when we were talking about doing the electronic file that we have in our office now, whereby we use electronically the tool to look at paperwork that's been filed relative to committees and things like that. We've eliminated a lot of paper. So we've done that over the past year. We're extending that at this point to including our audit information in the electronic file. We create a lot of individual reports and paper, and just a lot of facts relative to corporations we're looking at and committees when we do these audits. And we had talked initially about having this in that electronic file as well, and so we're proceeding with doing that. We have several things, Bill and I, to present to the commissioners at the Election Commissioners Conference, and we'll be working on a presentation for that. I think potentially more extensive presentation at our own conference in April, but we will do a presentation in January. That's roughly it in terms of the highlights of what we're working on. Bill, would you like to add anything to that?
Just on the data we're talking about for the audit is really the scanning component that allows ease of access. It'll be a useful tool and cut down on, in fact, we've got rid of some file cabinets, which is always a positive thing. So.
Any other questions? All right. So then we'll turn to information technology. George Stanton.
Afternoon, Commissioners. I'll be pretty brief since I've included this information in your packet, and a lot of people have talked about things that IT is involved in also. But we did take, even though there's a downtime during the holiday period when not a lot gets done, we took advantage of that fact that because Nysboe has been running pretty much nonstop since fall of 2007, we took the opportunity to shut the system down, excuse me, for 2 days actually. That we actually told the counties we were going to be down for the entire long weekend, but it only took 2 days, so we were up early. We took the opportunity to defrag all of the RAID hard drives, and we're talking terabytes of data. So it took I think it was roughly 18 hours just to do a defragment the hard drives. We also shrunk the database, and these two things together allowed us to gain a lot of extra wasted space on the hard drives that we can use now rather than having to extend our system. We also took advantage of that downtime to install all of the latest security patches and upgrades to the Windows operating system. And then we waited a week because we wanted to make sure that everything was going smoothly. After all of that, we didn't want to complicate anything. We shut down for a short time on January 9th to install some SQL Server upgrades to Service Pack 3, which is the latest SQL Server, and that's the database, of course, that stores all of the Nysboe data. So everything on the Nysboe hardware, software, everything is right up to snuff now, up to date. So that's a good thing. We still will need to shut down, at probably a quarterlies to install some service packs, but they will be shorter shutdowns rather than, an extended shutdown. We're still working with campaign finance on the new filing system software. We met last month with the audit people and got some of their ideas. We're, I think, almost completed as far as implementing some of those. We've implemented some pretty nice things. The developer, Phil Perry's ready to show it to us again here probably within the next month or within the next week, and then probably hopefully within the next few weeks we can show it to campaign finance again and get their input on that. The help desk staff's currently busy loading the January periodic filings. We've implemented at the request of enforcement that to reject filings that have the wrong PIN in them. We used to go ahead and load filings that had the wrong PIN number, and then audit staff would contact the filers to tell them that they had to correct it and file again. But starting with the January 15th, we're rejecting those filings, and they're being notified by campaign finance staff that they have to refile with the correct PIN. Other than that, we've been involved in the discussions on the MOVE Act and met with Social Security yesterday. And, that's about it. Have any questions?
Yeah, I do. George, how many counties now are in the statewide database?
Well, all the counties are in the statewide database and have been for the last 2 years.
Maybe I'm asking the correct.
If the question you're asking is if New York City is taking advantage of the web
That's what I'm
application
asking.
to do their voter maintenance, the answer is no.
That's the question, yes. Is there any other county taking the same advantage?
So everybody else has been doing it since they came online.
All right. Do you see any chance of any kind of reconciliation there with New York City?
I have seen no movement, towards any. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you, George.
All right. We'll turn to old business. The first item is discussion on the proposed formal opinion regarding the letter from the clerk of the Village of West Hampton Beach. Paul or Todd?
West Hampton.
West Hampton, I think we're getting closer. We have a few open items that we have to resolve mutually. Todd, I hadn't cleared this with you, but I think we are on one accord that the answer to the first question on what role the village clerk has in adjudicating this, that, or the other thing is none.
Okay. Well,
That part of it.
We have been working on it.
Yeah, we've been working on it, and, obviously there have been some new cases that have come down, and we've got to finish analyzing those cases.
All right.
But we do agree that the clerk is not running the challenge process.
That you can't make challenges to the county registration list by
Right,
giving them to the village clerk.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we'll put that over, and hopefully those discussions will continue. Kimberly, you have the next item, discussion of the proposals to the legislature for our
The legislative
package.
proposals that you have before you are basically last year's proposals with the list cleaned up that removed anything that may have been vetoed or chaptered, or if parts were chaptered, we modified the original version and resubmitted it and added 4 additional items that basically throughout the House were easy to do. I mean, it was easy enough to get together with some of the staff here and draft them up, and they were things that were practical things that we knew would be helpful to the counties primarily. That being said, I fully anticipate that at the February meeting there will be at least a draft of what we're going to need for the MOVE Act implementation, and also any additional matters that come out of the continued contact with the counties for review that relate to things, quite honestly, that I think Paul and I need the staff, the other staff, to show us really what those things are, because they're specific to how the ballots are configured, or things that need to be cleaned up with regard to the operations function that I personally don't have the ability to do. So we've already talked about it, and by February you'll have the remainder of the program, I think.
Is that when they have to be over there?
We have no deadline for that?
No deadline, I didn't know.
But realistically, this is the
The
time
sooner
to
the-
send them.
yeah.
Because the
Yeah,
legislature's
I agree,
in session.
because they're starting to,
The February, I think, I mean, with regard to the MOVE Act, we're going to have to speak, I think, with a variety of different people, including the legislative people and the Attorney General's office, and, they should be over there sooner than later. I agree with Commissioner Kellner.
Do you want to vote on this part of the package today?
these issues.
Well, if you took a vote today, then we could forward this over with a cover letter to the election chairs and whoever else would be, and then indicate in the letter that there's additional
Good,
things
should
coming.
come, yeah.
Number 1 through 7 are the carryover from last year, and 8 through 13 are new items.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think we've discussed these internally and that there's consensus on this. So is there a motion to approve the package as proposed?
So moved. Second.
Are those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, well, thank you. And I would just add that certainly doing the MOVE Act amendments, that's a big project. And the 2 long-term projects that are the issues relating to poll site personnel in the new age of scanners. So that, and I realize that that's a complex package to rewrite the way personnel are now assigned by election district and redo it into reassigning them by poll sites. But in the long run, that's what the county commissioners keep telling us, is we gotta try to work towards consensus on this, and I know it's a big drafting project. And
It's a
then
big
the
problem.
and then the other project is to take a bigger look at the absentee ballot article to try to get some consensus, because we know that there are a half dozen or even a dozen issues where there is not uniform application of or interpretation of the statute by the county board, so that we have this long list of issues that they're not particularly significant on a big policy issue unless you get to an election that is decided by one or two votes, as we saw in Chautauqua County, the decision of the 4th Department yesterday, where there is this, there are all these ambiguities in the absentee ballot statute, and since they're not applied uniformly around the state, it becomes ripe for litigation, and it's not fair to, in my view, put that onus on the courts to interpret that we should try to get these resolved in advance. But I know it's a very big project to rewrite a whole statute and try to get consensus on every word of it.
My biggest concern, especially this year's election at the polling site, is that we don't have, number one, it's hard to get people to want to be inspectors, number one. And number two, many of them have no idea about the electronic machines, no matter how much you train them. And we were in a polling site a couple of years ago, and I won't say where it is, and 3 of the inspectors were over 90 years old. Very proud of it. And it's a small polling site.
The average age, I think, is 88. Isn't it?
It's old. It's old. And I have asked the directors here on several occasions to speak to the colleges. And I think they wrote a letter, but I think we need a face-down talk with some of these college people to ask them to encourage their young people by a program that maybe we could work out statewide together with them, that they get some kind of a social studies credit by serving as an inspector, and encouraging young people to do that. And even as a community, giving them credit, for community service. But we have to do something. This first election, I think, on November, and I'm generally not a doomsayer, but I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of problems, as anything is with when you use new things, and then with the age of the inspector, especially in New York City, the lines are going to be long. I know they're only supposed to be a half an hour long, but I don't know how that's going to be controllable. And I have deep concerns about the election. First time using something new is always difficult. And as my grandson reminded me, the only constant is change. So, and I think that's good to remember. But at the same time, we want that change to be as smooth as possible.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. That segues into the next item on the agenda, which is the discussion of the transition from lever voting machines to optical scanning.
Oh, I should have waited.
No, that's fine. You got the opening salvo. Whose item is this, Todd?
Well,
or have we already really done it?
I think we've already covered a lot of it. I think what is important and why it's on the agenda is to make sure to raise really publicly that we are engaged in this transition, and it will be a year-long, well, not quite a year-long, but pretty much a year-long transition. Mm-hmm. And what we're in the process of, our first focus really has been obviously, to have the counties purchase the equipment, and as Anna reported, to make sure that all the counties have the management software, that they're trained to operate that the staff, the poll workers are trained to run those devices, and obviously for the voting public to be educated on the transition. And for all of those pieces, there have been programs from different parts of this agency put into place that address those, and slowly we've been moving forward with them. Last year we started with that. We developed the voter education component that we developed our public service announcements that we put out. We set up a system for the counties to customize that on a local level. That will continue. We've engaged in extensive training outreach to the poll workers and to the counties. We've revamped that to allow for access at all times, through a web-based program, but as well as providing hands-on support for training of the EMS software, where counties from around the state come for a hands-on training session, which is essential for that. And for the purchase is the last two major counties have to get their systems purchased and delivered, and there are some other smaller counties that are getting minor deliveries. But we also have in place a process to acceptance test those and get those deliveries out as soon as possible. So but that's just really on the county side. The other side is what we really now have to start reaching out is alerting other people who run elections that the counties aren't going to have this system. They're not going to have the levers anymore. They're going to have this, and then you're going to have to decide what you're going to have to do. But here's what we can do. Here's what actually happens. And that's the school districts. Those are the villages that run their own elections. Those are the fire districts that run their elections in December. The towns that run special elections throughout the year. All of these obviously we can't reach out to every town, village, and school district. What we intend to do is to work through their statewide associations, because much like the county boards have their own associations that work through us, all of these groups have their own statewide associations. Over time, we've interacted with them, and they've been watching us. But now we need to explain to them, what this transition means, because when the legislature changed the statute to take out a date certain for the change of the levers, they put in this concept of you replace the lever when you're ready to replace the lever.
Well, it says the lever machines can't. What's the exact word of the statute?
Upon the replacement of.
Well, is it?
Yeah.
No, but what's the operative language? The lever machine. You can't. The lever machines are no longer authorized when they are replaced.
And that's where the transition idea came up. Is when are you ready to replace it? Because you have to have all the parts.
Definition of replacement.
And in view of the court order, the absolute deadline for replacement is the September primary, so that the
time for the September primary.
so the counties have to.
Not at the September primary.
Right.
Because we need to know a certain number of, there needs to be a period of time before that we're all comfortable that they're ready. They can't wait till we can't learn on primary day.
Right.
And that's why it's important to say in time for the September
So if
primary.
you're having a special election on February 9th, and you have not already used the scanners in the pilot project, you would still have the option of continuing to use the levers in the February 9th special election.
Yes.
Yes.
But if you've already transitioned in your county or in that particular jurisdiction to the scanners, then you are not allowed to go back to the levers for those elections, right?
What if it was a
I think we're all
partial?
agreed on that?
No.
What?
What if it was a partial?
I didn't think it meant that.
Well, I think,
Partial pilot.
well,
That's
if
what
you,
depends on what
If
you
the
are.
portion was optical scan, they can't go back. If the
right,
portion was
once
lever,
you've
they still
used the
can.
optical scan, you have to continue using the optical scan.
Well, the rules change also in the pilot.
I think that should be our interpretation, that's what we should be telling people if they ask.
There are some counties that participated in the pilot that either had a whole county participation or a significant part that did not own the EMS. They were not trained in the use of the EMS. They did not do their own ballot configuration. However, our regulations change from the pilot to the actual use and requires that the county not contract out for those services. They do that work themselves. So that's another component of are they ready? They have to actually have the certified version. They have to have training in the use of the certified version. So it's, I don't think it's a date. There are a number of steps they have to be comfortable with, and each county will get to that point perhaps at a different time than the next county. There are several counties that did the full. As long as it's in time for the September.
So I'm still across at the
And
same
as
time.
always, when you have moving target dates, it's much more difficult to manage than a bright line
Yes.
date for the drop dead date.
I think Paul wants to speak.
Go ahead, Paul.
What we need and I'm not suggesting today, but what we need are milestone dates on a going forward basis.
Don't we have, at least in our agency, we have a detailed timeline, right?
For us, we do.
But it's going to be difficult with
We have
counties. They
one.
can all buy
County
EMS
compliance
today,
varies.
which is great, but they are all going to be trained at different dates. Some of the training is already going out into March, so their date is going to be different from anyone else's from transitioning, because even though they have the EMS, they're not going to get trained for another 2 months to use it.
I'm a fan of bright line
You and
dates.
Kim at the county
They're
meeting
easier, but.
in 2 weeks? Are
yes.
you speakers? Are you speakers at the county?
Yes.
County conference?
The state board has a session on the first day for a 2-hour period to cover issues that are, we need to raise with them.
I think all of these things have to be brought up again and reminded again and.
Oh, yes.
Given that we know that this is a step-by-step process, we need to have benchmarks in terms of time. We can't find out on August 28th that County A doesn't have this, doesn't have that, and doesn't have this. We got to know that as we go along. And that's something we've got to work at as an agency so that we have an obligation to the federal court to report how things are going. And we got to, I'm not suggesting we're doing that today by any means.
Maybe
but,
next week, next month.
I can't say that I've talked to all 58 county boards, but I haven't encountered any board that doesn't, that I've communicated with, that doesn't have that timeline already worked out. I mean, are we aware of any boards that don't have a timeline?
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't think that they're as detailed as, some are as detailed as others in this process. I don't think that anybody is saying, no, go away. We're not going to make this transition. I have not heard those words nor seen evidence of that yet, except in a couple of the smaller boards where purchasing the EMS at the prices that it costs is creating a hardship for them because they didn't have a lot of HAVA money to start with, so they're already into county money and don't have enough of that either.
Yeah.
But I don't know that anyone has outright told us that they can't meet these deadlines. I do think in ops and for the benefit of reporting to Council's Office in Justice that, we survey these boards regularly, just like we did with the EMS. Did you buy it? Are you buying it? Give us a copy of the requisition or the purchase order so we know that you have it, and we'll monitor the training dates with the vendor. Bob Warren's already doing that with both of the vendors, so I think it's something that we're capable of staying on top of. And if we come across a county that is lagging and has a substantial reason for it, we'll certainly bring that back to the board, but I can't imagine that there isn't something we could work out in-house with the directors and Joe and I.
Are all counties going to have them delivered on time, the ones who've just purchased?
We have...
What about their delivery dates of the new machines? Is there such a thing?
They're not off schedule.
Right.
No, they're not.
We have about 700 units now that were acceptance tested, or 800. Right, we've delivered out of that 800 units since, Christmas time.
I'm thinking about New York City and Nassau County. That's big
Well,
numbers.
they got to order them first. If you're not going to order them until February 1st.
I know.
But there is a plan in place.
Yes.
Yes.
That acceptance
Absolutely.
testing, and it's still.
Well, and
No, I'm not saying is there a plan.
ES&S has said that they are going to be able to
Severe
deliver.
penalties written
And-
into their deals that if they're late in their delivery.
And ES&S is very much aware of the magnitude of the sales that they've made.
And they have them.
But they know that there are now commitments for probably more than 6,000 machines between the two counties, and maybe as much as 7,500. So, but they know that, and
Yeah.
I think they are geared up to
Let's
do
hope
that.
so, yeah.
All right. Is there anything else on this topic? I think the transition to the optical scanning it's a big project, but what people have not been focusing on is just how significant the effort will have to be under the Military and Overseas Empowerment Act that has created a significant new mandate on the state and county boards of elections. And so
Who's in charge of that?
Bob, are you going to do this presentation now? But I would just say that I think that this is going to be a much greater challenge for the state board this year than the transition to the optical scan.
I think if you've heard so far today, we're all working on this issue because we all touch it in some way.
Can you summarize what the major issues are for the state and county boards?
Well, the major issue is we need to comply with the requirements of the Military Overseas Voter Empowerment Act by the November 2010 general election to allow a prospective military or overseas voter to request an application in some electronic format, and in that application they can, once they receive it, they need to identify a way that they want to communicate with the Board of Elections, either traditionally by mail or in not less than one electronic format. So we have to select one at a minimum, whether it be email or fax or some other way. And we have to have the ability, if they request electronic, to provide that ballot material, the blank ballot material and instruction material to that overseas military voter.
And specifically, when you say ballot material, you mean the
ballot, the blank
voter,
ballot.
An overseas or military voter will have the right to get an electronic transmission of the ballot.
Of the ballot.
And then the voter would print out the ballot, vote the ballot, and mail it back to the County Board of Elections in order to have that ballot counted.
Correct.
So
the MOVE Act has a further requirement, which is the portion that concerns us the most, and that is there's a requirement that states mail ballots to military voters not later than 45, send ballots, transmit ballots, not later than 45 days before the date of the election, unless they apply for a waiver. New York State would have, I think the date is September 17th or something.
4 days from the primary day?
Is the date that we would have to comply with under that rule. So New York could apply under, there are 3 hardships that we could apply for under, either litigation or a primary, and I forget what the third one is off the top of my head. So we could apply for the waiver, and there are deadlines to apply for the waiver so we can get a timely answer. But in addition to the application of the waiver, we have to provide a detailed plan how New York will guarantee sufficient time for the military and overseas voter to actually receive their ballot and have it cast, or have a chance to have it counted timely. So that's the real part of the plan that we are all discussing. How can we put a plan together that will allow us to meet the deadline and the requirement of the MOVE Act, and also have a reasonable expectation that the applicant will actually receive their ballot timely. And that's what we are looking at, a number of ways, perhaps, web-based or in a way that we can also meet New York State procurement requirements to timely meet. Procuring something that will solve the problem, and also are there any statutory issues that we want to look at. One of the big ones I think we've discussed that at its front is the MOVE Act requires compliance for elections for federal office. And I just think our general conversation has been it's easier for counties to deal with this requirement if we tie military voters to any election as opposed to just for federal office. Why send them in an even year a ballot electronically and in an odd year by mail that we already know they can't receive?
No,
so that's a statutory issue, but there are a number of them. But that's probably one of the, a very broad general one that makes sense. That we would, we've done that with most other implementations of NVRA or HAVA, where we at least try and make it from an administrative point of view a recommendation that we streamline it to make it easier to manage the program.
And technically, it's much more complicated than it sounds to provide a voter an electronic ballot, because you have to make sure, first of all, that the counties have to get every ballot form online, up online.
Every style.
Every style that has a military voter.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not every ballot.
Or
It's,
federal.
well, it's only the ones that you need. So
I come from New York City, so I guess I never thought in those terms that there
No,
are
we don't.
ballot styles that would have no military or federal voters.
Yeah.
But, so you have to get the ballot styles uploaded in an electronic format, and then you have to have a mechanism by which you can have the voter properly identify the correct ballot style. And that's where,
and give it to the voter,
well,
You gotta get them the right ballot.
right?
I think
Well,
every
that-
voter should have a PIN number by county. They should have a PIN number by county. So you know that the person who's voting is a legal voter.
no, but they're not allowed to vote electronically. All they're doing is
Oh,
downloading.
they don't allow them to
No,
respond
they'll get a-
electronically?
no,
Oh, I'm
they'll get
sorry,
the
I didn't
ballot
know that.
electronically
I'm
printed
ignorant
off,
of
right.
that, I'm sorry.
No, those are definitely the issue.
Yeah.
We've been meeting with several vendors that have started some
Yeah.
of this, there's a lot of people obviously interested in it, so.
Of course.
But yeah, those are some of the hurdles that
All right.
we have to overcome.
So,
And there are other deadlines that are phased into 2011 dealing with making the fail-safe federal write-in ballot easier for them to access, which would actually list the local candidates that they're eligible for. That's a further phase to the program. So we have, there are a number of deadlines. There's also a reporting requirement. A military and overseas voter needs to be able to track, was my application received, was my ballot sent to me, did the board receive my ballot? And that needs to be a method that they can access. So it's generally an internet type that we're thinking of. So there's a tracking element. So there's a number. There's an application process up front. There's the ability of the board to make sure that that person gets the correct ballot. And then there's an ability to track, their paperwork throughout that process.
and my understanding is that this has been added as a topic for the Election Commissioners Conference.
NASAD and NAS are both doing.
Well, we'll certainly, obviously, we have alerted that this bill passed to our county's election, and obviously we'll continue with them, because we're gonna need, they're ultimately the ones that obviously produce the ballot, send it to the voter, get it back. We just somehow have to come up with a system that, and you don't wanna make it so hard that it's difficult to use, so you have to work with all the counties that are at different levels. And it has to be streamlined on the voter side too, because you don't want to make it difficult for the military voter or the overseas voter. So there's a lot.
As I say, I think this is a
Normally take
lot
us a
more
couple of years.
complicated now than finishing off the.
See, I thought it would just be every
style
county,
scheme.
every military man would just go online, say Erie County, where in his address, and he would get the ballot.
Yeah,
That
but
would
that's a
be.
very complicated process
I know,
to make sure he
but
gets the
that's-
right
Right
ballot.
yes.
But
Yes.
this is an
There's a lot
example.
behind the
Well, I
scenes.
thought, I thought, at first I thought just a federal one, he would get, and then I thought he could vote on that and send it back electronically, but I guess he, that.
No, and there are major security problems.
Reasons, I
on
understand
why
that.
that's a long way off.
Yeah.
There are
Yeah,
some
and they give
states
up the
that allow
rights.
it, but
Yeah.
Very few.
there's tremendous criticism.
I think the state of Washington allows an awful lot of easy voting, doesn't it?
They do all mail.
Yes, but
Yeah.
all right.
One other, election operations did, as part of their survey of the use of the new equipment, how many ballot styles we used in the general election, and I think that number was 2,500, give or take a few. So that's in a general election, how many different ballot styles were used this year.
Right.
And that's a primary, multiply that times each party, that could happen.
Right. But in a New York City primary in a county committee year,
Well, the county committee doesn't appear on a military ballot, so that at least means that's one more thing the county has to keep track of, an absentee ballot and a military.
there is that federal lawsuit, Second Circuit decision.
Well,
Nice
but that only applied to,
For those.
until we're sued again.
Right. All right, let's, so there is, it's reassuring to hear that at least it's on the radar screen.
Oh, yes.
Is there a schedule yet for when we're going to have a plan and when we will be submitting a waiver application?
I don't think we have a finite. We've talked just generally that we wanted to be as prepared as we could before we go to the conference at the end of the month. And at
you're
that
going
time,
out there, yeah.
Todd and I are both going.
Yeah.
And, you know, we want to see what other states are looking at as far as solutions.
Great.
The vendors we've already been talking to will all be there.
The good news that I guess we haven't talked about is that this will all be paid for with HAVA funds.
Well, all is tough to say, but the MOVE had a requirement that the 2010 HAVA requirement payment be used for implementation of the MOVE Act. So we can use that as a available pot of money, and then once we've exhausted that, should we can use any other available HAVA money for that implementation, unless Congress gives us a specific.
But the bottom line is that it's not going to require a new source of state funding in order to...
Not by law.
Only to cover the local 5% match, because if it's state money, we need to match a nickel for every dollar we spend to access the federal money. So we just need to make sure, from an appropriation point of view, we have sufficient funds to get us the federal money.
I think the meeting in D.C. with all the other states will pay for itself in a way, because you'll come away with information that will be very helpful, and they'll get some information from us, and we'll give some to them.
And
Rather than
depending on
us
your-
trying to solve the problem all by ourselves.
And depending on your February meeting date, we could certainly perhaps have a plan by then. I just don't know.
Or give us a
That's our-
report.
that's a- we'll give you an
Give us a
update.
report anyway.
We'll be
Yeah.
a long way towards the plan.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that report. The next item on the agenda is the vote on the resolution to extend the storage area network service contracts. I believe that they were distributed in the packets. Is there a motion to approve the contract?
Well, does George want to say anything? Or is,
Do you need to say anything, George?
I don't know that I need to. I will if you want me to. I will just say that, because it's been 3 years since we bought everything, and this is just one piece of the puzzle, but it's been 3 years since we started building Nysboe. So now contracts or support contracts are running out. We're going to start running into these recurring expenses. We did decide, amongst my staff downstairs, that we also had a quote for server maintenance, which was, I think, $150,000 a year or something. And we've decided that it's not cost effective to renew that because we've got so much high availability built in. If one server crashes, another one picks up, and we can get the parts we need and fix it on a cost basis rather than spending, $150,000, of which we might end up spending $50,000 over the course of it.
Well, I know this was the subject of extensive discussions to make sure that we got the best costs. So I think, can we vote on it?
No, it says it expires in December 31st. Does that mean, I'm sorry.
Go
Excuse
ahead.
me.
No, go ahead.
When you gentlemen want to talk, you don't worry about me. This says it expires in December
Well, it
31st.
says the quote expired December 31st.
The quote, yes.
I'm pretty sure they'll still take our money.
That's just what I mean. You don't expect them to raise it January 1st.
I don't expect them to.
Okay, that was my question.
If they do, we're going to have discussions.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Okay,
All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, the resolution is approved. Does anybody want an executive session to discuss the preliminary determinations, or can we vote on the 6 items here?
What about personnel?
We're still going to do that,
okay.
but vote on what we can. All right, so we have 6 preliminary determinations that are on the agenda: CMP 881, 863, 862, 7, 155, 748, and 649. Those in favor of the reports as proposed by the enforcement staff, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Those preliminary determinations are adopted. I would suggest that before we make the motion for executive session, we talk about the date for the next meeting. I saw Commissioner Walsh had his calendar out before. You have a suggestion?
That week looked pretty good for me, that week of 14th.
That's good for me.
Let me see the back of the book, Josh, please. I'm sorry.
Make sure you're looking at 2010.
You really think I'm an idiot?
I'm sorry. I've done it the other way.
No, you can't.
12th is a
Get the
floater.
work of the 14th, the week of the 14th, the 15th is a holiday.
15th is a holiday.
That's all I'm
Yes.
saying. No.
15th is a holiday,
Okay.
so President's Day.
And the 17th, it's always good to have a day.
No, 17th is no good for me. I hate Wednesdays because